This is a great topic. Richard's presented for us a few times in the past at our Pulse conference, a few other webinars we've done in the past. But this is also, I think, a great opportunity in that we're sponsoring, Gainsight is sponsoring FeverBee's Successful Community Management course. So I know some of you received access to that ahead of time. If you haven't, we'll be sending some information afterwards as well. But really excited to be partnering in that capacity. But to really go into that topic a little bit deeper, and give you guys a preview. What we're going to do is run through a great session. I'll turn it over to Richard here in a minute, but I encourage everybody, as you have been already, use the chat actively. Richard's offered up to answer a bunch of questions just throughout the session, and we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. So make sure you use that chat option. You see it at the bottom of your screen, and then it should pop up over to the right, depending on how you have it navigated. But we'll be monitoring that throughout. And I'll make sure to feed those questions to Richard towards the end. Other than that, we will be recording today's session, so you'll get a copy of the recording afterwards. So we hope that you're able to stick around for the whole session. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Richard to kick us off. Welcome.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Mike, and also for the whole Gainsight team behind this, Jessica and everyone else. And it's awesome, honestly, to be able to have a chance to do this course with you folks. When we did our first course back in, I think, 2011, we thought, okay, we've finally compiled all the best information and advice that we've learned about managing communities into one course. And what we found since then over the years is that so much has changed. And a lot of the tactics and the principles which worked 10 years ago or 15 years ago don't work so well today. So when we're creating a new course, and we spent so much time on this, we wanted a course that would be very modern, include a lot of contrary thinking that we feel is accurate for today, and also combine it with live workshops like this. So what we're going to do, this is the first workshop of our new course. We've had, I think, around 750 people that have signed up for it, which is absolutely mind-blowing, to be honest. So thank you so much for that. And we're really looking forward to going through this workshop today where we cover the basics. So hopefully we're going to cover a lot of stuff that you folks already know and validates what you know. It might cover some stuff that you don't know, and hopefully we'll cover some stuff that you don't know. And also we're going to cover some new ideas or things that we're seeing emerging in the space that we need to know. But fundamentally today, we're going to be talking about what are the basics of brand communities? What are the critical things that we have to get right for everything else to really, really thrive? So you've already had some background on me. We've worked with a lot of amazing clients over the years, published a bunch of books, but I'm going to go through some very specific things today. One is, what is a community? And I'm not going to go too deep into the semantics of this is a community, that isn't a community. Next, we're going to go into what makes a community approach unique. Then we're going to cover what is the unique value of the community to organizations. And then we're going to cover what is community management and then the importance of the community type. And just a quick reminder, if you have any questions, you can ask them and I'll take questions at the end. If you have any comments, then use the chat box that you have. And make sure if you're using the chat box that you're selecting chat to everyone, not just the host and the panelists, because I know a couple of people have done that already. Just make sure that you're selecting chat to everyone. Okay, is everyone ready to begin? Quick yes or no? I dare someone to say say no. There we go. Absolutely awesome. Okay, so let's begin with the most simple questions out there today. And remember, we're going to begin at the very basics. We're going to build upon that over the next couple of sessions that we're doing. So make sure you sign up for the course. But what is a community? Well, let me have this as a question for you. How do you define a community? Take maybe 30 seconds and put your answer in chat. How do you define a community? What's your definition? So what do we have? How do you define a community? Take a couple of seconds and quickly put your answer in chat. And remember, make sure you're chatting to everyone, unless you only want me to see the answer. So how do you define a community? One of the interesting things that tends to happen in the community space is that there's fierce conflicts about the definition of community. And I don't want to go too deep into that. So we have a group of people with common needs and goals, gathering of like-minded folks, a collective of people liked by something in common like a purpose, common goal, identity, group of people unified around a common purpose, focused on supporting another, a group of people that at least have something in common, a support network of peers, common topic support group. Okay. A group of people with a common pain that care about each other and have rules and traditions. Okay, these answers are pretty good. What I think we find is that there's a conflict that I think we're all aware of when people think of a community and when they build a community for business. Because I think we know that a lot of business communities are focused more around getting people answers to questions quite quickly. And they don't always have that same feeling or that same sense of community that you might find in real life. And so when we think about definitions, we're not rigid about it. I think we need a very flexible approach. But I think there's different ways of even considering how you define a community. One is there's some sort of common interest. Usually it's something that unites people in some particular way. So you might have communities of action, place, practice, interest, or circumstance. At the next level, there's an engagement method. There has to be a means for these people to talk to each other. That might be in person, that might be through a hosted platform, social media, comments. I mean, there's a whole range of different things that are expanding every single day. Third is that members have some sort of relationship with each other. I think this is the most challenging one because sometimes they might just be acquaintances, sometimes they might be close peers. It very much depends on the type of community. And finally, there's usually some sort of purpose to that community. And that purpose is either exploration, they want to explore a topic together, maybe get better at it. They want support, they want a place where they belong, or they want to have influence. By working together, they want to have influence over a particular thing. And so my question for you, with the communities you're working with, what is the interest, the engagement method, the relationship, and the purpose? So maybe take about a minute and put your answer in chat. For the community you're working with, what's the common interest? What is the engagement method? What's the relationship? What's the purpose? And remember, of course, if we're going through this quite quickly, you can refer to the lessons as well that we have on the course website. So in one sentence, what's the common interest? What's the means of engagement? What's the relationship? What's the purpose? Try and put it all in one line because usually we get flooded by messages in chat. So if you put it all in one place there, then we can see it. Ashley says circumstance, hosted platform, member support. That's quite common. I think that's probably the most common brand community. I might be wrong, but I think that's most common. Katie, hey, says common interest, software, engagement method, all of those, relationship, peers, members, purpose, all. One thing I would say is try to avoid, and I'm not referring to you specifically in this one, but try to avoid being everything to everyone as well. We usually want to be very clear about this. Okay, let's see who else we have. Michelle, how are you doing? Digital marketing, social media, comments, member support. Okay, that's good. Yeah. I'll take maybe one or two more. Piper, the common interest is community management, circle, community, other members, purpose, support. Okay, yeah. So when we think about the definition, we know that every community can be quite unique, but we also are aware that it's good to define what a community is within an organization. Very often when we work with all different kinds of clients, we find that all the stakeholders we talk to have different definitions of a community. So they're not talking about the same thing. And I don't think we need some industry-wide standardized definition of what a community is. I don't think that's the solution. But I do think within the organizations that we work with, there has to be a definition of what a community is that's agreed and supported. Because if we can't define it, we can't define what the goals are, we can't define who is responsible for it. So if we go back here, it's a good idea to be very clear internally about what the definition is and get people behind that. Often you have to work with people, collaborate with them, but make sure it's very clear, like what is within the scope of community and what isn't. And that's one of the things I would really recommend that you spend some time doing. Even if it's a slide deck, make sure there's a very clear definition of what a community is to you. Okay, next question. The age-old debate. What's the difference between social media and community? I know that many of you have been doing community management for years and years and years, and you're tired of the question. But for the sake of the people that are new, what's the difference between these two? What's the difference between social media and community? And again, you can put your answer in chat. And just a quick FYI, I'm not monitoring the Q&A on this, so focus on chat and I'll get to the Q&A at the end. Mel says, community can engage in social media, but that's only one channel. Yeah, I think that's more of a traditional definition that we tend to use here. Manuel says, social media is but one of the channels a community can use. Yes, but I wouldn't say that's the difference between them. I feel like we're circling around the answer here. What's the difference between social media and community? Give it another 20 seconds or so. Piper, social media allows people to interact with the brand. Community encourages people to interact with each other and the brand. Okay, now we're getting close. Yeah, that's very close to where we're at. Social media feels top down. Yep. Okay, these are good answers. Yeah. Yeah, I can't read out every single one. Social media, just platforms, communities, other people, and purpose. Yeah. These answers are really, really good. Yeah. Communities of people. SM is a communications channel. Yeah. And so this kind of these kind of responses are quite common. Like I think a lot of us at some point have seen a slide that looks like this, which tries to articulate what's the difference between social media and community, at least in terms of managing those channels. And for a long time, there was a mindset that these two things had to be kept separate from one another. And a lot of community professionals for a very long time have been quite defensive, being like, no, social media is not community. This is community, and usually referring to a very narrow range of channels and activities and goals. But what we've been seeing over the last couple of years is that we're entering an era now where that doesn't make sense. Like most people don't participate in brand communities in their spare time. And when you ask an audience, where do they go to participate in a brand community? Time and time again, they refer to channels that aren't just a hosted community platform. And what we're finding is that the needs that people have are generally the same, but the preferences have changed. Where we go for belonging or to learn or support or influence isn't how it used to be. It wasn't that long ago where we go to one platform to satisfy all these needs. But if you think about where you engage today, where you go to learn, I mean, all of you are on this webinar today, right? Where else do you go to learn? Where else do you go to learn about this topic? Where do you go to ask questions and get support? If you want to have influence, where do you go? And I think most of us will name different channels for these kinds of goals. And that's typical of most people today. And so what we have to be careful of doing is making sure we're not falling victim to this community isolationism. This is where we spent so much time saying, this is a community, that's not a community. Because the problem with that, we end up on this tiny island where it's just us and we're missing out on the bigger picture here. And so I think there used to be a very clear distinction between these channels, but now it's more mixed. And I think we have to think that our definition of community can't just be what it used to be because it isolates us from so many goals and objectives. Or take this example from Lululemon. They say community is everything, but there's no place here for members to engage with each other directly. So is this a community? Or take Nike. You can become a member of their community, but you can't really interact with other people in that community. Does that count? Or Red Bull. You can join the community and read content and follow what top people are doing, but it's very hard to engage with each other. And you see so many examples of this. And I think we need to be a little bit more flexible with the definition. And the way we think about it more today is that if your work is involved with engaging your audience or increasing the sentiment of the brand, then fundamentally, there's a very high chance you're doing some level of community work. And we can be flexible with the definition and also make sure that we're spreading the principles of community further than just taking a very narrow approach. Does this make sense? I'm just going to check everyone is still with me in chat. I know some people talk a lot about the big C and the ball C and the small c community as well. That's also an interesting topic to pursue. But fundamentally, what we want to be clear is that we're a little bit more flexible with the definition. And I think when we are more flexible, I think we can achieve much better results and also spread the principles of community to other departments and other parts of the organization rather than trying to control one tiny channel. Okay, part 2. What makes a community approach unique? Or my question to you, what happens in a community which doesn't happen in other business functions? Maybe take a minute and put your answer in chat. And while you're doing that, a quick reminder that we'll be hosting more workshops as well. If you sign up for this one, I think we'll automatically enroll you in the next one. So if you get an invitation for that, just be mindful that's what it is. But we're probably going to do 4 workshops for the first course. We'll see how this one goes. But we want these workshops to be as interactive as possible. So it helps if you definitely to participate. Okay, what happens in a community which doesn't happen in other business functions? Let me go through some of the answers. Someone says a sense of belonging. Maybe, but if you ask a question in a community, you get an answer and you leave, do you feel a sense of belonging? Like a sense of belonging is a good example. Like if your iPhone breaks and you join the Apple community, do you want to feel a sense of belonging with everyone else whose iPhone is broken as well? And so it's questions like these that we're thinking about here. Let's see. Most of you have more or less got the right answer here. Customer focused content and answers? Maybe. The fundamental difference, and when we think about all the things that happen in other departments in terms of what people do, is that community is unique, is that customers engage with each other. There might be a little bit of that maybe in customer success as well, but community is fundamentally different in that customers engage with each other. And this creates unique dynamics which drive valuable behaviors. Think about this. None of us come home from a hard day of work and then would want to stack shelves in a shop in our spare time, right? But so many of us do unpaid customer support in our spare time. Why is that? Because community creates unique dynamics. Is that so many people willing to spend so much time effectively doing unpaid customer support for organizations because there are things that they want. They are being paid by a community in things that money can't buy. And community is essentially the wrapper. And that members engaging with one another creates a unique psychology. And that psychology is that need to feel appreciated, or that sense of competitiveness, or that need to feel distinct within a particular group of individuals, or that desire to collaborate, or feeling that sense of belonging. Once people start engaging around you, the psychology is different. And it's this mindset that drives the behaviors that we want. Those knowledge sharing, asking questions, those discussions, answering questions, these kinds of things. And when we think about what's unique about a community, and when we're explaining it to others, the thing is that community creates that psychology where members are doing valuable things. And the other very unique thing about community, and we'll come to and talk about more later on, is that it scales incredibly well. Okay, part 3. What is community management? If we know what a community is, what does it mean to manage a community? Maybe take a minute and put your answer in chat. One of the interesting trends in the community space is that it wasn't that long ago where there were so many community managers in the world, and this would be the default job title that most people had. Today, most people aren't called that. Like, I think that title is faded quite significantly, and it's more splintered into more precise and more unique roles. And that's being interesting. Okay, let me pick up some of the answers. Bailey says, facilitating community engagement while also providing support and maintaining the health of the community space. I like that one a lot. James, providing space needed for people to come together. Bridging the perspectives of customers and department. That's interesting. It might be a bit narrow, but it's interesting. Mel says, be the face of the org while getting others to engage and help them meet their needs. That's an interesting one. Be the face of the org. Yeah, I mean, again, I wouldn't be so rigid about the definition of community. Let me ask another question while you're here. What is your job title? I'm curious what your job title is of everyone that's on this session. Because I have a feeling that most people don't have a community manager role, or maybe they do. Wow, okay. Developer manager. Okay. Wow, that's completely the opposite of what I would have expected. I'm so glad I asked. Huh. That's so interesting that a lot of the data that we're looking at says that this title is fading away for more precise terms, but that's interesting, really interesting. A lot of community managers still out there. So when we think about community management and what it is, what we're essentially referring to is that community management is the act of growing and sustaining a community in which customers, employees, and partners and others help each other achieve their goals. And community management plays a very important role. It's not too uncommon for organizations to ask us, why do I need someone to manage a community? Or can it be 20% of someone's time? Or can it be 10% of someone's time? And the answer is, well, the more you put in, the more you get out of it. But you do need someone that's managing that community. Otherwise, there's a huge risk. So if you have an audience and someone that's managing that audience, then social media is usually what it is, with no dedicated platform. Obviously, if you have the platform and the manager, no audience, it's a ghost town. And if you have a platform and no audience, that's risky. I think that's a huge liability if no one is engaging in that community. And also the other big issue is that it's probably going to be a ghost town as well, to be honest. It's very hard for these things to get off the ground. And we've done a lot of research and work in the past where we've looked at the impact of someone that's managing a community. And it's more important in some types of communities than others. But fundamentally, having someone that's managing a community is absolutely key to a successful community. You need someone that wakes up every day worrying about the success of that community. And generally speaking, the smaller a community is, like peer groups or user groups, and we'll get into the groups in a second, the more important the bigger the influence of the community manager is. And so we spend a lot of time with organizations trying to explain not only is community management important, that it's worth paying someone significantly more for a smaller community as well. At a more advanced level with a support community, as we'll talk about later on, there's a numbers game and a more efficiency game that comes into play. But if you're just getting a community off the ground, having someone that's managing that community is absolutely key. But it's also emerging roles that we're seeing within this space as well. And while a lot of people are still managing a community in a traditional way, they might have a single goal like call deflections and a single audience and a single channel and structure and measurement. There's also that strategist role and then a different role as well. At the strategist role, this is usually where someone is executing programs across multiple platforms, not just a single community. But often they have call deflection, they're improving the experience. At the audience level, they might be talking to internal and external audiences as well, using a multitude of channels, and then having a structure where community team collaborates with the department. And the measurement can often change here. Where very often with community management, you might be measuring the immediate outcome, like call deflection, or things that the numbers can give you. When you're looking at multiple channels, usually the measurement adapts to attitude change or change in their behavior over time. And then what we're seeing, especially over the last 18 months or so, is what we're calling the community architect role. Some people call it a center of excellence, but I think community architect is the best definition for it. And this is where you're helping departments execute their own community activities across multiple platforms. This is where you're supporting internal goals. This is where you have multiple audiences that you're engaging with. And your primary goal here is different. You're focusing a lot more on documentation, internal community events and activities, offering your expertise to these events, and internal change as well. I shared this diagram a couple of months ago, and there's a huge amount of information in here. But fundamentally, a lot of people today, if you're managing a community, often focus on that one slice of the pie, where you're focusing on one or two groups of individuals with a specific platform, with specific needs, with a specific value add that you're managing. And over time, as the maturity of a community evolves, you tend to be having more departments that are involved, and the community might spread from customers as super users to partners and developers as well. And then at the ultimate level, the most mature level, the top community professionals I know today are focusing more on that common strategy, governance structure, stakeholder engagement, having an approved technology framework, best practices that are used widely, and staff training as well. And if you're thinking about how your career might progress here, this is how I'd think about it, where you might begin on that one level, and then you might go to that strategist level, then the architect level. Long term, a lot of people in community move into product, maybe marketing or customer success as well. But if you want to stay within that channel, then I think finding organizations that have this community architect role, whatever they might describe that as, and helping build these kinds of systems and this unified approach, that's where I'd recommend that you need to go. And if you're doing this kind of community architect role now, maybe put your answer in chat if you can. And we're going to try and keep up with chat, see if I can make that work. How many of you feel you're doing a community architect role now? And we spent a long time trying to decide what's the right terminology and definition for this, and it was tricky, to be honest. All right, Scott says yes, a couple of people saying yes. Okay, Malcolm, thanks for that, I appreciate it. Yeah, okay, so a couple of people are touching upon more departments over there. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information on this diagram. You don't have to use it, but when we think about community, we think about this more fluid concept today. But fundamentally, we want to be helping all departments build a successful community, not where we're managing ourselves, but we're helping them manage it and get the results themselves. Okay, part 4, what is the unique value a community offers organizations? Well, let me ask you, what is the unique value of a community? Like, you can have one answer here. Yes, few things scale like a community. What does a community offer an organization they can't get from any other channel? And again, you can put your answer in chat. What does a community offer that you can't get from any other channel? Honest insights. Well, that's a good example. Like, if you did a focus group or survey, would you not get them? Israel says connection. Yeah, I think you need to translate connection to a valuable thing. What is the outcome of that? Unbiased, unfiltered thoughts from real people. But would you not get that from a webinar or focus group or interviews? Belonging, maybe, but do most people want to belong? I'm going to push back on a couple of these, just because I want you to try and think how a lot of our clients think. And I mean clients in the skeptical sense. I think one of the challenges that community professionals have is that we spend a lot of time hanging around with people like us. And we're lovely. Trust me, we are really, really great. But when we start interacting with clients and people that are skeptical about community, these are the kinds of questions and answers that we need to be thinking about. Brand loyalty. I think people are loyal to quality products more than anything else. Okay. Real life experiences. It's interesting. I feel we're struggling more on this one because it is hard to describe what is a unique value of a community. And I think one thing is obvious is that community scales really well. When we think about the benefits of a community, especially, one of the obvious ones is support. And you can get support through many channels that are out there. There's virtual bots now, there's documentation, there's customer support. But why would someone ask a question in a community instead of contacting support? And what we're seeing more and more is that from a support perspective, there's a nuance. And this nuance is really important when we describe a community. One is that we've done survey results in the past where people do say they like a community as a preferred channel. But one of the things about communities is that everyone who has solved a problem can help the next person. And so someone might ask a question in a community, like I think this is a Dropbox community, and this single post has been viewed 30,000 times. So This is an extreme example, but 30,000 people might have seen this post, and then not contacted customer support. Let's estimate a value per call. That could be almost 500,000 savings. Now, I'm overestimating this because the nuance I can't be bothered to get into at this point, but theoretically, these are the kind of sums that make incredible sense. In practice, obviously, you can't count all of these as a call deflected, but that's something that we cover in course 4, not the first part of course 1. And we've done an experiment on this in the past. We did an experiment a couple of years ago, where for a couple of months, we hid a community from search results, tried to see what the impact was. And what we saw is that when we did this, search traffic to the community plummeted almost nothing. I don't know how I got any traffic at all, but it still did. And in that time, there was a spike in phone and online support tickets filed in each particular month. And this kind of data was really interesting. So there is a huge impact. And what we're seeing is that there was a 58% increase in support tickets, a 35% drop in response time, decline in CSAT, and we are estimating the community deflects 163,000 tickets a year. And this will be different for every organization. The point is that there's clearly an impact. And once we know what the value is to solving a problem in a community versus another channel, we can start to think about, okay, which people do we send to a community and which people do we send to other channels? What a lot of clients do today is that they have a community, not for the premium customers that they have, those that are paying for a particular package with an organization, but for all those 80% that aren't, the lower value customers that they have, these are the ones that community can support really, really, really well. Often it's the customers that are out of warranty, it's those kinds of individuals. But community also fits into a very particular place in the support experience. And what I mean by that is that there are questions that are repetitive and the same answer applies to every question. And this is where the help center, virtual agents, and even chatbots today are going to answer. And then there are questions that require personal information or they're an edge case that no one has tackled before. This is where customer support plays a role. And then there's what we call these in-between questions, which sit here. These are niche or difficult issues where the audience hasn't found an answer or maybe doesn't know what to search for. So a community plays a very specific role, and this is the unique value of a community. There is for growth of marketing. This is very often where community is generating unique assets which help improve conversion or attract new audiences, content, testimonials, reviews. I remember attending a talk by QuickBase a couple of years ago. Sorry, my throat's going. Where they said that they got all of their top community members to leave reviews on the top comparison sites that are out there. And then as a result, they were number 1 in every category that they were trying to be the top reviewed service for. And they generated millions of dollars as a result of this. So community can generate tremendous results. It can also generate the kind of content you want to read. Like Fitbit were looking at the top discussion in their community, creating content about that. So they knew that content was going to be popular in the first place. And they created great content that was usually quite a big hit. 3 is success or retention. In a community, it often works where the community becomes a base camp for customer success for newcomers and veterans. I remember seeing this post years and years ago, and it was so interesting that the most popular post in this community, the one that got the most views in the Adobe community up until this point, was this one. And when you think about this question, this is probably the most basic, obvious question that you can possibly ask in a community. And it's the kind of question that most people don't ask because it's too beginner level. But it was viewed more than any other question in this community. And when you think about what that might impact the conversion rates, people that are frustrated and struggling, they find an answer and they keep using the product as a result. These kind of questions have a huge impact. And we see a lot of sites like the DigitalOcean community as well, where they're just this base camp where everything's all in one place, where there's a question, where there's tutorials, where there's tech talks, where there's all these things that you can combine and have all in one particular place. Finally, insights. A lot of people talk about this as well. I think, if I'm honest, communities, they play a role in generating insights and feedback, but it's not as important as what it used to be. mostly because a lot of organizations prefer surveys, customer interviews, or have organizations take care of this. There are still like ideation platforms that are out there, and Octo and a few others that are doing it, but it's not as common as what it used to be, often because product folks found a lot of ideas weren't that relevant, and there's no shortage of ideas. Like there's always a lot of ideas, and so prioritizing them, knowing the value and the use case for them, that was a challenge. But it's also interesting situations like this with the Apple community, where people can highlight an issue and people can highlight whether they had this question too. These kind of insights, I would argue, are more important than ideas from customers, because it shows what people are actually struggling with right now. So part 5, and the final thing we'll cover today, are the different types of community. I think a challenge that comes up time and time again is that you read a lot of books and advice about communities, you'll see there's a lot of conflict in the advice that people share. Or you'll find that people share advice that doesn't work in your situation and just seems irrelevant for you. And you might be wondering, how does that happen? And that happens because people are sharing advice that works for their community type, and they're not being specific enough in saying, this is the community type that it works for. Well, let me ask you this question. What are the different types of community? What do you think? Again, you can quickly put your answer in chat. What are the different types of community? I bit my tongue just before this call, and it really hurts to talk. And I'm like, gonna get through it. I promised Mike I'd get through it, but you know how annoying it is when you bite your tongue? I did it twice just before this call. Okay, what are the different types of community? One says open unmanaged, managed, closed. That's interesting. Piper says span from Adrian. I miss him. Support, product, advocacy, and network. What does everyone else think? What are the different types of community? Give you maybe another 20 seconds on this. Robin says support, practice, product, and feedback. Maybe one more answer and I'll move on. What are the different types of community? When we began talking about community types a couple of years ago, I think out of all the things that we published and written, this got possibly the biggest response, because I think it unlocks something in how a lot of us think about communities and how we're struggling about communities. So the way we think about it is in these channels. And we think about it from a practical approach. There's many different ways that we could define a community, but I want to do it in a practical sense that makes sense to the clients we've worked with and people we engage with. And these come in the forms of different models. One is a support model. This is where the value is that to members that they spend less effort to solve an issue, their critical success factors in mind, key challenges you need to overcome, and a suitable platform that you can select as well. 2 is what we talked about before, that success and retention model. And these are going to closely match what we described already. This is where members can learn the best techniques and how to get the most out of the products. The difference between support and success is that activity in support begins with a question. Success is people proactively sharing knowledge. And more, this happens outside of a central platform. It's going to be in influencers, employee advocates, a whole range of different individuals. And again, the critical success factor is having smart people willing to share expertise, then the audience willing to consume it. And the challenges there are things that the strategy will overcome. 3 is the advocacy side. This is less common than what it used to be. With Influitive going to hell like recently and other platforms not doing well, advocacy isn't such a strong community approach. It seems to be more separated, but it still does happen. This is where you have a small number of highly enthusiastic fans that are trying to create the right content and materials, and you have to have a reward structure that works for that. Next is user groups. This is where the key value is you get to befriend and collaborate with other users like you. You need passionate group leaders for this. You need regular series of events for this. But finding the right group leaders, this is the critical thing. And then you have to build systems that can scale that. And finally, there's peer groups as well. This is where you have conversations you can't have anywhere else. These are usually closed, they're usually private. There's a lot of small groups for senior people in different spaces. You might have a lot of these kind of groups for your friends. And I think the challenge is for you and for everyone building a community today is to be very clear about what model of community that you're following and make sure you're consuming advice that's about that model. Because the techniques and tactics you take to build a peer group are very different from a support community. And in fact, support is often a different beast entirely to all of these other types. So a question for you, looking at this, what type of community are you building now? Take maybe a minute to answer that. Most people will say support. Yeah, support is the most common. And that's partly because that's how most brand communities did begin. To reduce support costs is the easiest to prove. There's often more support and peer groups and a variety of things, but support is by far the most common, so I'm not surprised to see that. Also, I'd say most Gainsight communities at the moment are probably support centric, but that's beginning to change. Support and peer groups, we're getting to user groups. Yeah, so when you look at this, I would pay very particular attention to the success factors and the challenges, and also the value to members. This is what you should be promoting to your members as well. So a lot of communities struggle because they get this wrong, but if you get it right, you'll be so much more successful. And this changes everything else. It changes, for example, the tactics you'll use to grow a community. The approaches you take to grow a support community are different from a peer group and user group where you might be individually inviting everyone. Support is more of a mass market game. And it also changes how you launch a community. When you're launching a small community, the approach is completely different from how you might launch a large community. We talk more about this in the next course, so I don't want to spend too much time on it today. But the final thing I will leave you with this. God, my tongue is killing me. Is that most brand communities are transactional, and there's always that conflict between what we want a community to be and often what it is. I don't say if it is transactional, then own it. Like if it is transactional, you're probably generating a huge amount of information for people. You're helping millions of people or thousands of people, perhaps every single day. And that's because people don't feel a sense of belonging in a support community. Doesn't mean that a support community isn't worth as much as a community where everyone feels a close sense of belonging. There's an inverse relationship between the value to the individual and the value to the organization and the relationship desire that people are going to have. So just be clear about what kind of community that you're really working on and then own it, because it's a lot easier to make your peace with that than try and convert a transactional community for those people to feel a sense of belonging. And so I know that we're short on time, so I'll skip this question for now. But let me just say thank you so much for this. Like, it's been great to have this chance to do this session with you today. And make sure as well that you sign up for the course. Hopefully someone can put the link in chat at this point. The course is free. Gainsight is sponsoring it for 2 years, so a huge thanks to them for doing that. We'll have more sessions on this. I think there'll be sessions that we host, but I'll talk with Mike after that because we didn't talk about it before this call, but I think we'll be hosting them. And again, thank you so much. I'll be taking questions at this point. Mike, if you want to jump in, feel free.
Yeah, well, first, let me say thank you again, Richard, for joining us and bringing us through some great content. It seems like great participation on the chat channel, so hopefully you guys got some feedback directly there as well. But we did have a couple questions come in, and I'll ask everyone else, feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom, actually, to submit any additional questions. Yeah, we'll take the extra 12, 13 minutes we have left. But I'll start off. One of the questions that came in, Richard, for you was, what do you think about the free version of Slack communities? I know there are communities, but there's no history beyond 3 months, and that's from Piper. So I don't know if you have an opinion on that on Slack.
I don't have a strong opinion. Like, there are Slack communities that I participate in and I drift in and out of. I think each platform is suited for a different audience and use case, and I think free Slack communities are fine. I think they're very good for peer groups, user groups, maybe a little bit of success communities as well. they're often being used as a default thing in gaming and for developers right now. I think the challenge with Slack is that you're never going to get search traffic, but it's great for when it's not a support community. And I think it's great if I go back a couple of slides, actually. Oops. Let me just go back to this slide. I think Slack is very good for maybe success, maybe user groups, peer groups. I think peer groups especially. Yeah, I think Slack's good for that. But just be very clear what the trade-off is. Slack is usually easy, cheap, inexpensive unless you get a paid plan. But people drift in and out, and it's hard to sustain a community over the long term, I think. But I have no problem with Slack. I know a lot of people say that forms are always the best, and forms are more about which use case makes sense. So I don't really have a big question on Slack, really. A big yeah, perspective on Slack.
No, I mean, to your point around just kind of owning what you are and the type of community you are, I think that that's a good call out. I mean, we have a lot of customers I know that have started with Slack, and then some of those issues have sort of reared themselves where they've needed to document or have a history. So makes a lot of sense. One maybe specific question for you here as well was on your experience where the community was non-indexed, was it also kept online for those who could reach out outside of organic search, or was the community also taken down entirely? Again, pointed question, but see if you have an answer there.
No, we couldn't remove it entirely because there'd be a lot of negativity from regular super users of that community. But when you remove it from a search engine, or just no index of that community, it's like removing the map. So people that know where it is can still get there, but people that come via search won't be able to find it. And so that worked. It's not a precise approach. It's not the same as removing a community or deleting a community or just taking it down for like a month. That'll give you great data, but at what cost? We found that de-indexing a community was the most efficient way to prove the value of a community, but it's a very high risk approach. Like, we had a theory about what's going to happen, but we don't know. I mean, it was more for years we wanted to do a test like this, and we finally got the opportunity to do it, and so we did it. There's often actually an interesting, when there's a migration of a community, sometimes there's some downtime. It's often worth looking at the data of what happens then for things like support cases and things like that. Whenever there's any downtime in your community, there's natural data that you can look at, see what was the impact on support cases and tickets and those kind of things.
Question from Lisa: what is the best way to encourage super users and also prevent bad actors in a community? And actually, when I read that, I think we did a session, not necessarily with Richard, but Gainsight hosted one around building trust in communities. I'll have to dig that up and send it your way. But Richard, just around the super user and bad actors in a community, what's your approach there?
Yeah, that topic is huge. I would say we're covering that in course 2. And we're covering bad actors in workshop 3, I think, but it's covered in like this session of the course, so that's free. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. I'll say for super users, the basics, and I know a lot of people pass that, is that super users don't want to be paid. Like, they just don't. They want to feel influential. They want to feel appreciated. They tell themselves a story that they're helping lots of people. And that's a story that you have to tell them. So a lot of people focus on intangible rewards and points and badges and all those things. And that has a small role. But the biggest thing that we've seen time and time again, the thing that has the biggest impact is access to the brand, like knowing people that work at the brand, engaging with them, feeling like they have some influence is the biggest thing. But as I said, we'll cover it in like later in this course and then in the second course as well.
Okay. And I'm just one comment. There was a question that came in just in the Q&A, not in the Q&A, but in the chat, just around someone having an issue registering for an account. If anyone else had that issue, definitely reach out to us. We'll make sure that you get access if for some reason there was a bug or break in the process. That most likely was on Gainsight's end, but we will definitely get that fixed and rectified. So follow up in the email you receive from us. And then with us,
Can
just
I
kind
jump
of
in there quick?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Rick.
What we're seeing, like with the link, it should work, but it just takes you to like a page where it tells you to log in. If you click register and then register, you should still get access. That's worked for most people. If it's not working for you, then yeah, let me know and drop me a line and I'll manually add you.
You got it. And just with us kind of coming up to the top of the hour here, I'm going to wrap up with just a final question. And we'll make sure we do follow up. I'll follow up with Richard directly on some of these, and we can reach out as well to continue the conversation. But just to prove, folks have gotten access to the course. We had the question come in around the fact that I just completed the successful community management course. And there was a thank you there to you, Richard. But which would you recommend next? So continuing the education, do you have any recommendations on where to go for continuing to build their best practices and expertise?
Yeah, so we've got four courses. This is the one that we're frankly promoting at the moment because we don't want to promote four courses at once. But like, there's a natural progression from doing the basic course to doing the advanced course, the strategic course, and then the data-driven course. So I would say you can just now join the next course up, but only the first one is free. Like at some point we have to make some money, put food on the table, and do all those like great things. I have to eat at some point. But yeah, if you drop me a line after this, we do have a discount for people that completed the first course to take the second. So if you drop me a line, yeah, I will follow up after that. So any chance I can take one question that I've noticed here that I really like?
Yeah, we've got a couple minutes. I'll let you take it. Absolutely.
This question from Manuel is so good. From a tech standpoint, community platforms in the same space as Gainsight feel like they are losing their differentiator. To me, at least, what would you say is an upcoming killer advantage that is not AI or AI related? I think the death of community platforms is both understated and overstated. And what I mean by that is that we don't know what AI is going to do. Like we've looked at a lot of our clients, and at the moment, it's not having a huge impact. I don't think there's a killer feature for platforms at the moment. I think they're in a mature market, and it's a Gainsight webinar, so I'm not going to talk too much about their competitors or anything, but everyone's facing the same challenges at the moment where very often the needs of brands are more specific than what any one platform can satisfy for. And so a lot of people hop from one platform to the next and they think that they're going to solve all their issues, but they just replace one set of issues with another set of issues. And so what I would say unless you're on Salesforce, in which case you should definitely leave, it would make a lot of sense to really figure out what problem you're trying to solve if you're trying to leave. And honestly, most of the future and being privy to a lot of the roadmaps that are out there, they're all focused on AI now. Like it was focused on integration and analytics. Now every vendor is AI, AI, AI. I don't think there's going to be a killer feature, but I do think a lot of the decisions about what platform to use at the moment aren't always about the platform itself, but about data privacy, data security, those kind of things. We also published a platform report. Maybe someone can put the link in chat that you can read as well for our thoughts on what platforms are out there. But I don't think there's a killer feature. Manuel, maybe in chat, we've like worked with you folks in the past, but like, what would be the killer feature for you? That's a good question for chat, actually. What would be the killer feature you'd want in a community platform? What would persuade you to move? And I'll let Mike wrap up while you folks are answering that in chat. Thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, and Richard, thank you for grabbing that question. I'm glad it was a good one to wrap on. So for everyone, as mentioned, thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Richard, once more for bringing us through a great session. We will, as a final reminder, send out a recording from today along with the slides, so you'll have access to those. So we'll wrap, but I see a few good comments coming on analytics and another shout out to Backstreet Boys. You're welcome, everyone. And yeah, a lot on analytics. I don't know if that jumps out to you, but I don't know if you have a parting comment or shout on what trends you've seen or what your vote would be for.
Analytics is what people say over and over again. But if I'm honest, what everyone says they want, but I'm not sure they'd move platforms just because the analytics are better. I think very often it's the procurement teams that are making these decisions and they look at the security and integration and what or other platforms that they're using those kind of things. But analytics is definitely what community professionals want, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, just from here, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone as well. The level of participation is being absolutely amazing. So thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. Well, we're looking to continue the dialogue with you, Richard. We'll do, some follow-up sessions, but thank you again for everyone for joining. We will speak with you soon. And with that, have a great rest of your day.